This is an exquisite, top-tier, magnificent, and most insane, OP, super crazy, immortal, broken, amazing build. Hello, New Off here, and I am not a moron. Let's just say I have your attention now, fully hooked on what's happening, and in this guide, I will clearly and plainly explain everything about the most universal Whirlwind Barbarian build for the endgame in Season 14. With this build, you can farm Torment 12, or you can go push the tower 140. You can snap Ubers and Mephisto in half. Right now, someone using a variation of this build is on the front page of the leaderboard, so get ready. Without any fluff or superlatives, I'm going to talk about two variations of the Whirlwind Barbarian, the bleed version and the freeze version. And most importantly, after watching all the chapters of this guide, you will understand the difference between the variants, how and why it works, or conversely, why something isn't working for you specifically. New Off here, let's go. But I already said before that I'm new off dementia, apparently. First thing we'll break down is the bleed version of the build. They call it a bleed build, even though the main damage is from critical strikes and the bleed is a bonus. But it's a bonus that deals a significant portion of the damage. I'm clearing Pit 121 in the background in 1.5 minutes. I clear it over and over with this time to level my glyphs with an 8% chance to rank 141. Right now, they are at 140. I cleared Tower 136 with this exact same build, with the same level 140 glyphs and the same gear. But if you max out all your stats and transfigurations, you can clear 145 plus like some of the guys on the leaderboard have done. I will explain how and what to do in detail. So the Whirlwind Barbarian build for mid-game and end-game, the bleed and freeze variants. Key point, the melted heart of Selig Amulet doubles our fury but reduces our maximum life. The goal is to minimize life. This is not stated anywhere, but any extra point of life reduces your survivability. Therefore, nowhere in your gear or paragon should there be a single stat that directly or indirectly increases maximum life. In the end, you must have 473 maximum life, no more. If you have more, you will die. Your fury should be 500 or higher, but not more than 650. More details on everything below. Skills. Whirlwind is maxed out. This is our main and only damaging skill. For its enhancement, we select these nodes. I won't spell out every single node in the entire skill tree. I'll only mention it if it's important or if something changes depending on the circumstances. As a second skill, we also max out Rallying Cry. This is our movement speed and resource generation. Resource generation and resource pool size are the key factors of this build. Third, we put 1 point into Iron Skin with these nodes. The main thing here is gaining Unstoppable every time we activate it and stacks of Resolve. In the farming variant, we use the node for run speed. In the pushing variant, the adjacent one, which inflicts weakness on enemies. Weakness on enemies reduces the damage they deal. Next, we invest 4 points into this shout. The enhancement nodes are for inflicting weakness, increasing damage, and further damage reduction. If your survivability is good, to maximize damage, pick this node for extra damage. Our ultimate will be igniting enemies for this damage bonus. Next, Warcry to the max. Enhancement nodes for stacks of ferocity and for applying vulnerable to enemies. This is our only source of vulnerable, and it only lasts for 4 seconds. The third node increases the damage we deal. The last skill is the ultimate. We max this out. Enhancement nodes are for resource generation and attack speed. The second one is for overpower stacks for damage. The third one can differ. Choose the one that extends the ultimate's duration while you're still assembling good gear. Later, we use this node to ignite enemies and increase our resistances. Tip: this node works in tandem with the challenging shout node. The burning damage itself doesn't matter. What matters are the resistances from the ultimate and the damage buff from the fact of burning, which comes from the shouts node. Gear. Tip: the key stats on all gear are maximum resource and resource generation. Tip 2. Starting in Season 14, all unique items have 2 mandatory inherent affixes. You can find a list of these affixes via the link in the description. We take the Tusk Helm of Joritz the Mighty. This helm has an inherent core stat and maximum life. At first, a regular unique is fine. Later, you make it mythic. Desired stats, strength, resource, pool size and generation, and cooldown reduction. Mine doesn't have CDR, but eventually, hopefully, I'll get it. Tempering armor. Chest armor. Rage of Harrogate is taken for the cooldown reduction of all skills when applying damage over time. The DOT for this aspect is applied through the ultimate, the challenging shout node, and through the two-handed sword expertise. Inherent stats, strength and DOT damage. Tempering for armor. Gloves, Gore's devastating grips. Here I have cooldown reduction, but they should only have offensive stats. Inherent stats, strength and plus to Whirlwind. Ultimately, you need to get all offensive stats as shown in the planner. Tempering, critical strike damage. Pants, T-Ball's will with strength, armor, resistances, and resource generation. Initially, 2 stats are inherent, strength and max life. Life, I remind you, we must eliminate everywhere. Tempering, armor. Boots with strength and resistances. Instead of resistances, you can use armor. Movement speed as a stat and in tempering is mandatory. The aspect is one of 2, aspect of anger management or battle mad aspect. One of them goes on the boots, the other as the secondary aspect on the amulet. Tip: if you craft the amulet first, you have a choice of 2 aspects. Since it's not so easy to hit the right aspect on an amulet, this will save you some prisms. Also note that you can only place an aspect from the utility category as the second one on an amulet. Amulet, Melted Heart of Selig. This is the key to the build. It must have 2 resource stats on it, pool size and regeneration. A greater affix in one of them is desirable. The other 2 stats are critical strike damage and damage to vulnerable enemies. These are the desired stats. Inherent stats are strength and resource generation. Tempering, cooldown reduction. Rings have identical stats. Critical strike chance, critical strike damage, damage to vulnerable or physical damage or all damage and cooldown reduction, aspects in them, crushing aspect and heavy hitting aspect. Temperings, cooldown reduction. Weapons. In the main slot, a 2-handed mace. It is chosen as the weapon we actually swing. To select it, press the skill assignment key, scroll the mouse wheel down, and you will see the tooltip. To assign the mace, click the mouse wheel. You can assign a weapon to any skill in a similar way, but in this build, there is only 1 damage skill. Stats, strength, weapon damage, critical strike damage, and physical damage. If there's a star on flat damage, masterwork into this stat. If not, then wherever you have a greater affix. Critical strike damage or physical damage is preferred. Tempering into critical strike chance. Aspect of channeling. Tip: in a 2-handed weapon, all aspects have double the power compared to 1-handed weapons, rings, and gloves. Aspects and amulets give a 50% bonus. Tip 2. All items with 900 power can get a masterworking crit on a greater affix. Items with lower power cannot. On your weapon, besides critical strike damage, you can choose any of the bonuses that drop damage to all, to physical, or to vulnerable. Once you reach pit 140 plus, you'll see for yourself what needs a boost and what's already fine. I'm talking about the damage type bonuses. Tip: any legendary one-handed weapon will do. Any, meaning a sword, mace, etc. These weapons no longer have inherent properties, and their weapon damage value doesn't matter. The aspect of Berserk Ripping gives a portion of the damage as a DOT. But we don't maximize DOT stats because the size of this DOT depends on the power of the hit itself. This aspect is the key difference between the bleed variant and the freeze variant of the build. Stats: strength, critical strike damage, physical damage, all damage, or damage to vulnerable. Use whatever procs, especially with a greater affix. Tempering: critical strike chance. But if your rings have critical strike chance with a GA and you have the grandfather with a GA on the chance, you'll already hit 100% critical strike chance. Therefore, on one weapon, the tempering could be for physical damage or attack speed. Tip: GA greater affix is a normal stat with a 50% increased value. The second one-handed sword is Ramaladni's magnum opus. It has inherent weapon damage and maximum resource. We need to catch the other 2 necessary stats so we can re-roll the weapon damage at the occultist. Tip: weapon damage only matters on the weapon we are hitting with. This flat damage on other weapons does not function, and it's desirable to change it to a useful stat at the occultist. Other stats like life, strength, critical strike damage, and bonuses to any damage types sum up from all weapons and work simultaneously. Similarly, aspects on weapons work regardless of which weapon is active. Important: Fury on lucky hit and life per hit must be on one of the one-handed weapons. Life per hit on a 2-handed weapon would be grossly excessive. On a one-hander it's just right. Also, life per hit can appear as a stat during transfiguration at the cube. This is a weak stat for transfiguration. Fury on lucky hit is a decent stat and can be on each one-handed weapon. Let's get back to the second one-handed sword, Ramaladni's magnum opus. As I already said, it has inherent weapon damage and maximum resource. We need to catch the other two necessary stats to re-roll the weapon damage at the occultist. Desired stats are in the planner. Tempering for critical strike chance. Two-handed slashing weapon, iconic mythic, the grandfather. Its inherent affixes are weapon damage and critical strike chance. Critical strike chance with a GA is desirable, and we will be re-rolling the weapon damage at the occultist. Here we want to get stats as indicated in the planner. Tempering for critical strike chance. Tip, for anyone who heard that you can only use one mythic false alarm, this restriction has been lifted, and in a build you can use as many mythics as you want. But this party will only last until season 15. The top transfiguration for all items in the Whirlwind Barbarian build is maximum resource and physical damage, but getting them everywhere is only possible with industrial scale farming and crafting. I, for example, have not a single one. But the higher people are on the leaderboard, the more often these transfigurations appear on their gear. Critical strike chance. We absolutely must hit 100% critical strike chance. It's not as hard as it seems. Critical strike chance must be on gloves and both rings, and also in the tempering of all four weapons. But there's a nuance. If your critical strike chance on gloves and rings has a greater affix and your masterworking is also into chance, then you free up one tempering slot on a weapon. Tip again, at the blacksmith, a tempering on a 900 power item can get a greater affix. If the item's power is below 900, you cannot get a GA on the tempering stat. Also, don't forget that there is critical strike chance in regular paragon nodes, in a legendary paragon node, and in a rune word with the Gar rune. If you utilize all critical strike chance possibilities, you can get over 120%. What I'm saying is that getting 100% is quite realistic without any superhuman effort. Check your profile. It should be 95% when using the flawless technique paragon node, 85% when using that same paragon node and a rune word with Ga. I don't use a rune word for crit. My profile value is 95%. The remaining 5%, as I mentioned above, comes from a paragon node. With this, I have 100% chance and masterworking into physical damage on one weapon. Cooldown reduction. There is a nuance, and it lies in the fact that in the final build version, we invest in efficiency, and at the same time, the duration of our shouts is limited to 4 seconds. Everything here is important. The damage bonus and the only source of vulnerable application in the build. Resource generation is always important, as is movement speed. It provides not only mobility, but also quickly activates the rune word with the back rune, which is directly tied to movement speed. The faster we move, the more often we trigger the rune word, and the rune word depends on the build variation. But more on that later. We must have CDR on our helm and both rings as stats, ideally with a greater affix everywhere. And as a tempering on all jewelry, the amulet and both rings. Here, a GA is a must. I have cooldown reduction on my gloves because I couldn't get it on the helm. The most effective combinations are shown in the planner. The aspect on the helm in addition to damage also adds CDR. Also, the aspect on our chest armor helps immensely with cooldown reduction. When applying a DOT from a lucky hit, we reduce the cooldown of all skills. As I mentioned above, the DOT for this aspect is applied through the ultimate, the challenging shout node, and through the two-handed sword expertise. Just so you know, other two-handed barbarian expertise techniques don't work with Whirlwind Tornado, so we are forced to use this one anyway. Total CDR in my profile is 55%, which is enough. Fury. At the beginning, you might have issues with Fury. You absolutely must have flat Fury generation on your helm, chest armor, and boots, preferably with a GA, but it can work without. These are flat generation values that allow us to accumulate Fury in any state and location. The second important nuance is Thibault's Will Pants. They grant 50 Fury while we are unstoppable, and for 5 seconds after it's applied. Unstoppable is provided by the Iron Skin node and the ultimate Wrath of the Berserker itself. Also, Unstoppable gives us immunity to crowd control effects from enemies. The aspect on the helm helps to generate additional Fury. We also have several sources for increasing Fury regeneration rate. Maintaining Fury at its maximum is the key to damage and survivability. You must have the Fury regeneration rate stat on the amulet, preferably with a GA. After additively increasing the regeneration value from the amulet, we have 2 multipliers for regeneration rate. These are multipliers of those very same flat regeneration units specified on our items. Fury pool size. Your total Fury should be around 600. This depends on having a greater affix on Fury stats and having Talismans with it. You shouldn't socket all Talismans with Fury, as it reduces efficiency. Everything is about balance. Tip: instead of one of the legendary rings, either one, you can equip the Ring of Starless Skies. It will halve the resource cost of channeling Whirlwind and Rallying Cry, but you will lose damage. Besides, getting this ring with the necessary stats is quite difficult. Talismans. In both build variations, we use the same set of talismans, Berserking's Crucible. In both build variations, we use 4 talismans with a bonus to martial skills and 2 talismans with a bonus to maximum resource. You can do 3 of each. Greater affixes on the bonuses are desirable. In the bleed build, secondary bonuses are not important. Resistances are desirable. In the case of the freeze variant, which I'll tell you all about later, the skill and resource bonuses are the same. But the secondary affixes play a key role. It must only be freeze. More details later. In both variants, the unique talisman Endurant Faith is for defense. How it works is written right on it. Tip: if during combat you see your resource draining and you run to the side while the resource continues to deplete in ticks every second, that's our talisman working. That last tick is usually what kills you. Movement speed. All you need is a bonus to movement speed on your boots. First, as a stat, it can be a GA, but it's not mandatory. What's mandatory is a greater affix on the tempering bonus. On location, you automatically get a berserking bonus from this aspect. The aspect as explained above can be on boots or as the second one on the amulet. This brings your speed to 200 plus. And then when you activate skills, you get even more bonuses. My speed is 263. Look, I have an amulet with movement speed. If I put it on, nothing changes. The movement speed under buffs doesn't change. Therefore, 2 bonuses on boots are all you need. You multiplicatively increase the movement speed bonus with Rallying Cry. You can also raise your run speed with this node on Iron Skin. I sometimes run higher pits and use the node for better survivability. You can use either node, whatever is more convenient for you. With this bonus, my speed is 288. And as you understand, the label Immortal in the headlines of other bloggers, and mine too, is complete nonsense. This barbarian was immortal last season, in season 13. Now his survivability is so-so, and the claim of immortality is just as much a lie as the introductory sentence of this very video. Skill rotation. You enter a rift. First, you hit Rallying Cry to generate resource, then you hold down Whirlwind. All other keys right after you start moving. Pop everything on cooldown. You don't need to think. A skill is off cooldown. Press it. If you have everything assembled with the necessary values, even without greater affixes, everything will work and there will be no issues. To understand how everything is interconnected, you need to take your time and read what your skills give you. I mean literally, hover your mouse over one skill and read, then the next, then the next. Then switch to your gear and read the aspects. You won't remember what each one does right away, but by reading once or twice in different situations, you'll start to connect everything into one cohesive whole. Initially, just follow the planner. Tip: aspects on mythic items are also called aspects, just like on legendaries. Tip 2. We get 45 for damage from a shout node and from a legendary paragon node. I've covered everything about critical strike chance and cooldown reduction above. I won't be covering Paragon, it's simply bonuses distributed across nodes. A normal node, normal bonuses, a magic node, a bigger bonus, a rare node, even bigger, and once per board, a legendary node with a very significant bonus. Everything in the build works in conjunction with other nuances. Keep that in mind. Something might seem unimportant to you, but it's most likely important. Thanks to the sword, our maximum resource directly influences our damage. If you have 600 Fury, the damage bonus will be 390% multiplicatively. Simply put, all your damage is multiplied by 4.9. Jewelry sockets, gems for raising resistances to poison, lightning, and fire. These are the most problematic elements. Mercenaries are classic. Subo for vision on the minimap, Rahire for defense. As independent combat units, they are useless. Only their bonuses matter. Which ones specifically are indicated in the planner? It's not always obvious to everyone. So tip, a planner is a map of skill distribution and everything else in this specific build, and the link to it is in the description. Attack speed breakpoints. In the bleed variant of the build, we do not roll attack speed on any item. Attack speed after receiving all the build's buffs can be checked on the target dummy. As I said, we deal damage with a two-handed mace, so we look at the corresponding column. My attack speed is 81.3. This falls in the range between 78.3 and 91. This means that if I were to increase attack speed, for example to 90, or conversely decrease it to 79, nothing would happen to my actual attack speed. It would remain the same. All that would change is the additive damage multiplier. These are negligible changes. Therefore, if your attack speed under all buffs is say 80, then a 10% attack speed increase on gloves or a ring would give you a final 90%. And that's just a bit of an additive damage increase without a real acceleration of attacks. And it's far more profitable to get a really useful stat instead of this hypothetical attack speed stat, like critical strike damage or physical damage. That's the internal attack speed calculation mechanic in the game. It's based on 60 frames per second. These internal 60 frames don't depend on your monitor's FPS in any way. Whether you have 30 or 240, the game has its own formulas. Nuance. Whenever I say crit damage or physical damage in the guide, I am of course referring to the multiplier of that damage type. That's obvious. It just takes too long to say it's a multiplier every single time. Runewords. First, I use Igni plus Ohm to increase damage. Even though I use this shout on my skill bar, the damage bonuses stack. The second rune word is for stunning and increased critical strike damage, back plus Yom. To increase critical strike chance, if you're lacking it, use the Gar rune instead of Ohm. If you lack cooldown reduction, use this rune combination. Now, about the freeze variant of the Whirlwind Barbarian build. Didn't you watch what was above? Skipped it? But that was exactly 95% of the build. The key change is that the bleed aspect is swapped for the Azure Wrath sword. This is the key to the entire freeze setup's damage. The longer enemies remain frozen, the more damage they ultimately take. Paragon doesn't change, skills don't change. Only a few gear items and talisman affixes change. Let's go into a little more detail. I swapped the legendary sword with bleed for Azure Wrath. Second, I changed my main weapon, the mace, to this one. Why? Because I got lucky here and critical strike chance procs during a cube transfiguration, and I can now temper freeze chance. I also swapped my Ramaladni's magnum opus for an identical one, but also with freeze chance. As a result, I end up with a 95% critical strike chance plus 5% from a Paragon node. I now have attack speed on a sword, and under all buffs, my total attack speed is already 93% plus. This means the Barbarian has started to attack really faster, and a real increase in attack speed allows for more frequent lucky hits. And this in turn increases the chance to apply freeze. Breakpoints are important for bleed too, but for freeze this plays a much more noticeable role. Next we go to Talismans. I'm showing you my Talismans from the bleed build variant again. Here you see one with a stun chance. This is unacceptable. Why? More details later. Likewise, slow and similar effects are unacceptable. I'm changing 3 talismans because I only have 3. The final result looks like this. 2 with freeze, although for a top tier build you need all 6 with freeze chance. 2 with maximum resource and 4 with a bonus to skills. The legendary talisman is the same, as I don't have another one with freeze chance. So, I assembled this build variant and immediately got 200 and 300 trillion damage. That's not much. For the guys who have assembled all talismans with freeze chance and the necessary transfigurations, these numbers pop up at 10 quadrillion. I remind you, the whole essence of this setup is to keep the enemy frozen for as long as possible. And when they leave the frozen state, they receive 156% of all damage dealt during the freeze duration. They receive it as a bonus, on top of the damage dealt during the freeze itself. It might seem that this setup is radically stronger, but no, it's stronger, but only by a couple of tower levels. Due to the sword replacement, we lose the constant and control-independent bonuses from the aspect. But the hardest thing in the freeze build is getting the freeze bonuses on talismans. In the regular game mode, they can be bought. In SSF, where I play, you can only find or craft them. This requires luck and 1000 hours of gameplay. Important. If you are playing the freeze build variant, you must have absolutely no crowd control effects other than freeze itself. If there are any, the mechanic will not work properly. This happens because all crowd control effects are subject to diminishing returns. each subsequent application lasts for less time. Therefore, any crowd control effect is a gradual reduction in the duration of that control. For this reason, it's recommended not to use any other crowd control effect besides freeze, because only from freeze do we get the damage amplification effect. At the same time, any crowd control effect causes diminishing returns, including on the freeze we need. Although in theory, diminishing returns accumulate for each crowd control effect independently. That's in theory. In practice, I'm not sure that's the case. So avoid any crowd control effects other than freeze. Tip: all of us here, myself included, are telling you about this and that. Meanwhile, the leaderboard has updated, and there's a guy on the front page who has neither bleed nor freeze. Instead of those, he has this aspect. The aspects themselves are the same. They are just placed in different items. Skills and Paragon are all the same. This proves that bleed and freeze do not radically affect the build's damage. It's easier to survive with freeze, that's a fact. But if you have the necessary transfiguration on all your items, resource or physical damage, or plus to skills on rings, then that is the deciding factor. Besides that, he has 5 talismans with maximum resource. This is the regular game mode with trading, 300 plus hours of gameplay, and of course skill. And the variety, the build variation itself is already secondary. You might be surprised, how can something at Blizzard not work? Yes, this is a normal occurrence, not something out of the ordinary. For example, right now, in Season 14, all two-handed weapon specializations except the two-handed sword are not working for the Barbarian. They specifically don't work with the Whirlwind plus Tornado combination. They might work with other skills. The aspect for the mace bonus is not working. This is not a theory, this is a reality confirmed by a patch note. Some things just don't work. I'm not complaining or whining, I'm just keeping you in the loop. This is not a gold standard, it's a very ordinary game that constantly has something broken. A good game, but not perfect in technical terms. When will it become good? The answer is obvious. When they stop breaking it with what they sell us under the guise of content. All these innovations don't allow the game to be polished and constantly break things. When they give up on the game and let it sail freely, then a small development team will gradually fix everything. Then, and only then, will you be able to plan builds and other things the way you want, and not the way the game allows you at this specific moment. That's all on the Whirlwind Barbarian variations. Forgive me if I forgot or missed anything. Of course, I could sit here for 40 minutes moving my mouse around the screen, then I definitely wouldn't forget anything. How would you like that option? Is that fine? Or are there already loads of those frantically mouse-jerking talking heads? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Good luck, health, and blessings to you. See you around. Bye.